To war against the gods is to engage in the most profound kind of rebellion, the kind that is not loud or external, but internal and unrelenting. It is the rebellion against the parts of ourselves that have become too comfortable with limits, too loyal to pain, too familiar with fear. When we speak of gods in this context, we are not talking about deities with thrones in the sky, but forces within that have been given too much control, too much worship, too much obedience. These are the forces that have dictated our worth, our actions, our dreams, and even our identity. They speak to us in silent commands that often go unquestioned, like "you cannot," "you are not ready," "you are not worthy." These voices do not scream, they whisper, quietly but constantly, and so we follow them without knowing we are being led. To war against the gods is to wake up from this silent obedience and reclaim what was always yours: the power to choose, the right to change, the strength to rise. There is a moment in every life where the soul begins to stir, even if the body remains still. Something inside begins to realize that life is more than survival, more than acceptance, more than routine. The soul begins to ache, not because it is broken, but because it remembers. It remembers that we were not created to kneel before fear. It remembers that we were not designed to live confined by limitations that were never truly ours, and in that aching, a decision is born, not loud, not dramatic, but real, the decision to no longer serve what is false. This is the first act of war. It is not always visible, it is not always noticed, but it is always felt. The gods that ruled unchallenged within you feel the shift, and they begin to resist. That resistance is what most people call anxiety, confusion, fatigue, frustration. But it is not weakness, it is the battlefield. As you rise into this internal war, you begin to notice how much of your life was shaped not by your soul, but by survival. You start to see the patterns that have run your decisions: the need to please, the fear of judgment, the addiction to comfort, the avoidance of truth. You start to recognize how often you have been guided by voices that sounded like your own, but were really echoes of the past, of society, of pain that was never healed. These are the gods you are now confronting. They have worn many names: trauma, failure, rejection, loss, but their power comes from the belief that they are final, permanent, untouchable. And so, to war against them, you must stop believing that they cannot be overthrown. This war is not a sprint. It is not a single battle. It is not won in one moment of bravery. It is a journey of many steps, each one deeper into the truth of who you are. Some days will feel like victory, and some days will feel like retreat. You will have to revisit wounds you thought were healed. You will have to face parts of yourself you tried to bury. You will have to question beliefs that once gave you security, and through it all you must keep walking. Not because it is easy, but because turning back is no longer an option. You have seen too much. You have felt the fire. You have heard the call. And though the world may not understand, you know this is the only way forward. This path will ask everything from you. It will strip away illusions. It will remove your masks. It will demand honesty, integrity, courage, discipline, and faith. Not faith in something external, but faith in the light within you that refuses to go out. The gods you fight will try to distract you. They will tempt you with comfort. They will whisper lies of hopelessness. They will tell you that nothing will change, that your fight is in vain, that you are too broken, too late, too weak. But the warrior within you knows better. The warrior within you has already tasted freedom. The warrior within you has already glimpsed the truth, and no matter how dark it gets, that truth will guide you. There will be moments of silence where nothing makes sense. You will doubt your progress. You will feel lost, but these are the sacred moments. These are the moments where growth is happening underground, where your roots are deepening, where your soul is expanding. You may not see it, but you are changing, you are becoming, and every moment you stay committed, every time you choose truth over fear, every time you keep going when it would be easier to quit, you are winning. Not just for yourself, but for every soul that will be inspired by your strength. Because make no mistake, your battle is not only personal, it is universal. Every victory you win inside yourself creates a ripple in the world around you. Your courage awakens courage in others. Your authenticity gives others permission to be real. Your light shows others what is possible. And so, your war against the gods becomes a service to humanity. Not because you set out to save anyone, but because by saving yourself, you become a living example of freedom, and that is the most powerful gift you can give. Eventually, you will reach a point where the gods no longer feel like enemies. You will see them for what they truly were: lessons, mirrors, challenges that called you into your highest self. You will no longer need to fight them, because you will have transcended them. You will walk in a new kind of peace, one that does not come from avoidance, but from alignment. A peace that comes from knowing you faced the darkness and did not run, that you stood for your truth even when it cost you everything, that you lived fully, fiercely, freely, and in that peace you will no longer be at war, because the gods, once feared and obeyed, will have become part of your story not as rulers, but as reminders of what you overcame to become who you are. The war will be over, but the wisdom will remain. And that wisdom will guide you for the rest of your days, not as a sword, but as a torch, not as a weapon, but as a light. To war against the gods is not simply to rise in opposition, but to accept the burden of deep internal transformation. The second phase of this journey is perhaps the most difficult, because it demands not the fight, but the fire. It is the fire of purification. It is the fire of letting go. It is not the act of confronting your gods with rebellion, but the quieter and far more painful act of shedding the parts of yourself that have become loyal to those gods. These parts are not always easily identified. They are the layers you have worn for years, identities crafted from trauma, beliefs built on survival, masks shaped by rejection, and behaviors designed to be accepted, not authentic. When you begin this part of the war, you start to see that the greatest attachments are often not to people or possessions, but to the person you thought you had to be. Letting go is not weakness, it is a sacred dismantling. It is the surrender of lies, the unlearning of false strength, and the demolition of illusions that kept you small. In this fire, everything is tested. You begin to question what you once called truth. You start to see that many of the things you defended were actually defenses against your own expansion. The gods within do not always wear ugly faces. Sometimes they appear as tradition, loyalty, humility, or even love. But if these things are rooted in fear, they are not truly noble. They are prisons wrapped in gold. You begin to feel the heat of change, and you must decide again and again to walk through it, not away from it. This fire will touch your ego first. The ego will resist. It will bargain, justify, and cling. It will tell you that you are losing too much, that your identity is dissolving, that you are nothing without your past roles. But the warrior knows that ego death is part of soul rebirth, and so you learn to breathe inside the burning. You learn to hold yourself when the world you built begins to collapse. You learn that what is falling is not your life, but the lie of it. You feel lost not because you are broken, but because you are no longer bound, and in that confusion you begin to discover who you really are, apart from who you were told to be. This phase of the journey is lonely. Few will understand. The gods you are fighting are not visible to others. The battles you are fighting may seem invisible. You will want to explain yourself, to make others see the truth, but you will learn that real transformation does not need validation. It only needs courage, and so you walk alone, not because no one loves you, but because no one can do this for you. You begin to learn the sacred art of solitude. In the silence, you begin to listen not to the noise of the world, but to the whisper of your own spirit. And what it tells you is both beautiful and terrifying. You are not who you used to be. This realization is liberation, but it is also loss. You grieve not only relationships and beliefs, but versions of yourself that felt safe. You grieve the identity that helped you survive, the armor that protected you, the performances that earned you approval. You understand that the gods within were not just oppressors, they were companions. They were familiar, they were predictable, and now, without them, everything feels uncertain. But uncertainty is the soil of evolution. You begin to see that the fire is not here to destroy you. It is here to reveal you. It is here to strip you down to your essence, so that what remains is only what is real. As you continue to let go, you begin to feel lighter, even as you mourn. You begin to feel clearer, even as you stumble. You begin to feel more alive, even as parts of you die. You see that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to stand inside it. You begin to walk differently, not because your path is easier, but because your feet are now planted in truth. You speak differently, not because you have all the answers, but because your words now flow from a deeper place. You stop pretending. You stop apologizing for your awakening. You stop bowing to the gods of expectation, perfection, and fear. People will notice. Some will be inspired. Some will be threatened. Some will leave. Some will try to pull you back. But you will not return to the old temple, because you have tasted freedom, and it has made you thirsty for more. You will not worship at the altar of conformity again, because you have remembered your own divinity. You will not kneel before old patterns, because you have stood in the presence of your own light. And from that light, everything begins to change. You will begin to build a new inner world, one not ruled by fear, but by clarity, not driven by shame, but by purpose, not limited by the past, but liberated by presence. This inner world will feel strange at first. It will feel too open, too quiet, too uncertain. But over time it will become your sanctuary. You will protect it fiercely, not with walls, but with discernment. You will no longer let just anything into your mind, your heart, your body. You will become intentional, and in that intention you will become powerful, not the power of control, but the power of alignment. You will also begin to recognize the gods you once feared in the faces of others. You will see how many people live in obedience to what no longer serves them. You will feel compassion, not superiority. You will want to help, but you will learn that the best way to lead is to live, to embody your freedom so fully that it becomes a mirror for those still in chains. You will become a presence, not a preacher. A reminder, not a rescuer, and in doing so, your life will become a kind of quiet revolution. Eventually, what once felt like war will feel like wisdom. You will no longer need to fight as you once did, because what needed to be burned has been. What needed to die has died. What needed to awaken has awakened. You will still feel the pull of old patterns now and then, but you will meet them with a different gaze. You will not panic. You will not obey. You will pause. You will breathe. You will choose, and in that choosing, you will return to your center. This is the second stage of the war against the gods, the fire. It is the descent before the rise, the silence before the song, the breaking before the becoming. It is where the ashes of the old fall to the ground and the seeds of the new are planted. It is painful, sacred, and necessary, and if you endure it with honesty and heart, you will emerge not only lighter, but brighter, not only freer, but fuller, not only changed, but transformed. The third phase in warring against the gods does not come with fire or confrontation, but with rebuilding. After the battle and the burning, there comes a moment of stillness, a space where something new can finally begin to grow. It is in this space that you realize the war was never just about destruction. It was about preparation, preparation for a new foundation, for a new way of living, thinking, moving, and being. You have torn down the false altars, walked through the flames of letting go, and now, for the first time, you are left with open ground. It may feel unfamiliar, this silence. It may feel empty, but it is not emptiness that confronts you now, it is possibility. You are no longer governed by the voices that once defined your limits. You are no longer reacting to the chains that once bound you. You are standing in the presence of your own becoming, and from here, every choice matters. There is great responsibility in freedom. Now that the old gods no longer speak for you, you must learn to speak for yourself. You must begin to understand the weight of your own voice, the direction of your own will, the power of your own decision. It is no longer enough to avoid the patterns of the past. You must now create the patterns of the future. This process does not happen quickly. There are no shortcuts. Building a life from truth takes time, presence, patience, and deep trust. You must listen to yourself again and again, not to the noise of who you were, but to the whisper of who you are becoming. The rebuilding begins with clarity, not grand visions, but quiet understanding. You begin to see what matters to you, not what you were told should matter. You begin to feel what resonates, not what simply impresses. Your days are no longer filled with performance. They are filled with alignment. You say no more often. You create space for silence. You are no longer addicted to validation because you have found something steadier inner congruence. You stop seeking answers outside and begin trusting what rises from within. This shift does not happen all at once. Some days you will fall back into old thoughts, old fears, old desires, but each time you do, you catch yourself faster, you recalibrate more easily, you learn to return home to yourself without shame. As you rebuild, you also begin to choose your inner architecture. What do you value? What do you protect? What do you invite in? These are not surface-level questions. They are sacred ones. You start to redefine success, not by the world's standards, but by your soul's alignment. You no longer measure your worth by what you accomplish, but by how honestly you live. You find joy in simple things, things that don't require applause. You begin to sense that peace is not a destination, it is a frequency. A choice, a posture of trust. This is where you start embodying what you have fought for. You do not just speak of freedom, you live it. You do not just speak of boundaries, you hold them. You do not just speak of truth, you walk in it. And this embodiment is what separates those who dream from those who transform. Your presence begins to carry a different energy, not because you are perfect, but because you are real. People feel your clarity, even if they don't understand it. They sense your peace, even if they can't name it. You become a lighthouse not because you try to shine, but because you have removed what blocked your light. This phase of the journey is deeply creative. You start building relationships that are rooted in truth, not trauma. You find work that expresses your spirit, not just your skills. You cultivate rhythms that nourish your soul, not just your schedule. You begin to honor your body as a temple, not as a tool. You give yourself what you always needed from others: safety, encouragement, compassion, and care. You become your own source, and in doing so, you become a source for others, not through sacrifice, but through overflow. Of course, there will still be resistance. The old gods may whisper from the shadows, doubt may return, fear may knock, but now you are no longer seduced by them. You recognize their voice, you remember their games. And more importantly, you remember your own strength. You don't fight them as before you outgrow them. Their power fades not because you destroy them, but because you no longer feed them. You have built something stronger, an identity rooted in authenticity, a life shaped by intention, a mind disciplined by truth. As you walk deeper into this phase, you may also begin to realize that your journey was never just about you. Your healing touches others, your alignment inspires, your integrity invites, and while you do not live for others' approval, you live in a way that becomes medicine for those still lost in their own battles. You don't preach freedom, you reflect it. You don't force change, you embody it. And through this embodiment, you make space for others to awaken, just as you did. This is also the time where you find rest. True rest, not escape, not distraction, but deep rest that comes from no longer pretending. Rest that comes from being at peace with who you are, with what you've let go, with what you've become. You no longer chase outcomes with desperation because you trust the process. You no longer grasp for control because you've surrendered to alignment. You find joy in your own company. You find beauty in your own breath. You are no longer rushing towards some imagined arrival. You are finally arriving in every moment. There may be fewer people around you now. The ones who loved your old self may not understand this new version of you. That's okay. You are no longer living for numbers. You are living for meaning. The circle may be smaller, but it is real. Your relationships are deeper, your conversations more honest, your love more open. You are no longer afraid of being seen because you are no longer hiding. You are no longer afraid of being alone because you have learned to sit with your soul and feel whole. And so you walk forward, step by step, not in haste, but with reverence. Every moment is sacred now. Every decision is deliberate. Every action flows from a deeper place. You are not the same person who began the war. You are not defined by the gods you once fought. You are no longer ruled by the fears you once obeyed. You are new, and yet you are more yourself than ever before. This is what it means to rebuild after the war. It is not about rising to be admired. It is about rising to be aligned. It is not about becoming powerful in the eyes of the world. It is about becoming whole in the presence of your own truth. This is the quiet glory. This is the sacred path. This is the reward, not applause, not perfection, but peace. Peace that came from fire. Peace that came from courage. Peace that came from choosing your soul over your comfort. And so, you keep going, not because you need to prove anything, but because this is who you are now. Not a warrior in search of war, but a soul who has learned to live in truth. The gods no longer command you. They no longer define you. You have remembered your own divinity, and from that remembrance, a new life continues to unfold, one breath, one step, one sacred moment at a time. The fourth stage of warring against the gods is not about struggle or shedding or even rebuilding, but about embodying mastery. This is the phase where the warrior becomes the sage, where action is replaced by awareness, and where resistance transforms into wisdom. Having fought the invisible rulers within, having walked through the fire of surrender, and having reconstructed a life rooted in authenticity, now you begin to live in alignment with all that you have become. You no longer react to the world from woundedness, you respond from clarity. You no longer act from fear, but from purpose. The war is no longer raging, but its echoes remain as a reminder of what it took to arrive at this quiet power. In this phase, you learn to move with presence, speak with intention, love with fullness, and exist without needing to be anything other than what you are. You begin to realize that life no longer controls you because you have understood that control was never the point. What you sought was not dominance, but harmony. You used to fight against life, thinking it was your enemy, but now you see that life is your reflection, and your relationship with it is shaped by the lens through which you view yourself. The gods you fought were never outside you. They were the projections of your internal dissonance. They were the voice of fear, clothed in authority. They were the shadow of your own denied potential. And now that the noise has quieted, now that the fire has refined, you see that your battle was always with the false self, and your victory was remembering the truth. Living from this truth does not mean that pain vanishes or that challenges disappear. It means that when pain comes, you do not run. You meet it with stillness. When uncertainty rises, you do not grasp, you lean into trust. When temptation knocks, you do not shrink, you choose your response with discernment. You are no longer seduced by drama, nor shaken by chaos. Your peace is not fragile, it is forged. It came through fire, through solitude, through silence, and through choosing again and again not to betray yourself. And now that you have built it, you protect it not with aggression, but with awareness. There is a depth to your presence now that cannot be explained, only felt. You walk into rooms and shift the atmosphere without saying a word. You listen without trying to fix. You speak without trying to impress. You love without needing control. This is not because you have achieved some perfect version of yourself, but because you have stopped pretending. You are no longer trying to win a war, you are living beyond it, and that freedom is magnetic. It draws people not to your image, but to your essence. They may not understand what it is, but they feel safer around you. Not because you have all the answers, but because you have made peace with your questions. In this phase, simplicity becomes sacred. You no longer chase more, you honor what is enough. You stop outsourcing your joy and begin to extract beauty from the present moment. A breath becomes a prayer, a conversation becomes a blessing, a sunrise becomes a reminder. You begin to notice the subtle, the silent, the soft, and in those quiet spaces you realize you are exactly where you're meant to be. Life stops being a race and becomes a rhythm. You follow the flow, not out of passivity, but out of trust. You no longer push against the current, you move with it, because now the current is no longer fear. It is alignment. You begin to serve not from exhaustion, but from overflow. You give not because you seek recognition, but because your heart is full. You lead not by command, but by example. Your energy becomes an invitation, your presence a sanctuary. You are no longer bound by roles or titles, you are rooted in your being, and from this being, your doing becomes precise, impactful, and effortless. What once required struggle now flows. What once felt like pressure now feels like purpose. This is not because life has become easy, but because you have become clear. There are moments when the old gods try to return. They come disguised as old habits, old doubts, old patterns, but you see them now. You recognize their tricks, and more importantly, you do not fear them. You do not run. You greet them with a calm smile, with the inner knowing that they have no home here anymore. You bless them for the lessons they taught you, and then you release them again and again. This is not resistance, it is transcendence. You no longer fight shadows. You stand in the light, and that light is you. Relationships shift in this space. You no longer tolerate dishonesty, chaos, or manipulation, not from others, and not from yourself. You no longer chase people who do not see you, nor do you beg to be understood. You are no longer interested in convincing anyone of your worth. You know who you are, and that knowing becomes your boundary, your standard, and your compass. You attract those who meet you in that same depth. Conversations become richer, connections become more intentional. You no longer cling to what was, you honor what is, you welcome what will be. There is a calm power in the way you now hold space for yourself, for others, for life itself. You no longer need to dominate or defend. You no longer seek to be right. You seek to be real. You listen more. You react less. You pause, you reflect, you choose, and every choice reflects your values, not your wounds. Every step is a prayer, every action a mirror. You are in harmony now, and that harmony radiates from you like warmth. Even your failures look different now. You do not shame yourself for mistakes. You study them. You do not spiral in guilt. You return to center. You are gentle with yourself, but also honest. You no longer avoid your shadows, you integrate them. You know that every part of you has something to teach you. And so the war becomes a dance, the gods become teachers, the pain becomes power, the path becomes peace. As you live this way, you notice that you no longer need to constantly strive. You do not wake up every day feeling the pressure to prove. You wake up grateful, aware, available. You begin to see life not as something to conquer, but something to collaborate with. You meet challenges with curiosity, not fear. You meet success with humility, not ego. You meet endings with grace, not desperation. You are becoming a mirror of nature, cyclical, adaptive, flowing, grounded. You have returned to something ancient, something sacred, something real. This is the final fruit of warring against the gods, not perfection, not power over others, not some high pedestal of enlightenment. It is presence, deep, undisturbed presence, the ability to sit with yourself in stillness and feel no need to escape. The ability to face the storms of life and remain anchored in peace. The ability to love fiercely without attachment. The ability to give freely without depletion. The ability to be fully alive without explanation. This is what it means to win the war, to live not as a slave to old gods, but as a vessel of truth, to walk not in armor, but in authenticity, to move not from fear, but from freedom. And so the journey continues, not with noise, but with quiet strength, not with resistance, but with receptivity, not with striving, but with surrender. The warrior lays down the sword, not because the battle is over, but because it is no longer necessary. The gods are silent now, and the soul speaks clearly. And in that clarity there is no need to fight only to walk, to breathe, to live, to love.